Thank you all for attending our forum this morning, and I extend a very warm welcome to you all. As you all know, banking and financing in Australia can be incredibly difficult, especially with the beliefs and values that we hold as Muslims and the fundamental disagreement between what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed on us and the system that we have in place today. Our aim today is to offer the audience some advice on how to navigate financial systems, how we can engage in end-of-life services in Australia in accordance with Islam. There will be a specific focus on wills and estates, inheritance, debts and clearances, superannuation investments, and lastly we'll open the floor to Salam funeral services. And now let me turn to introducing our panel for today. We have with us Imam Salam of the Wandana Mosque, Brother Bilal Morgib, the Principal Lawyer at Crescent Lawyers, Brother Ahmed Zika, the President of the Islamic Society of South Australia, and Brother Muhammad Uzair Beg, who currently works in S&R accounting, specializations, private advisory and strategies. Before we proceed today, on behalf of the Islamic Society of South Australia, I'd like to extend a special thank you to Brother Jamil of the Sri Lankan community for his enormous effort and initiative in bringing about today's forum. Now I'd like to invite Brother Bilal Morbi, Principal Lawyer at Crescent Lawyers, to share and speak on the importance of Islamic wills from a legal perspective.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Firstly, Jazakallah khair to Brother Jamil and his organisation and ISSA for arranging this meeting today, and inshallah it will help educate us on very important matters. So I'll be talking inshallah about wills, and in particular Islamic wills. So the topics that we'll cover are: what is a will, why is a will important, what is a Islamic will, and why is an Islamic will important for us Muslims. And if we have the time, I'm limited to about 15 minutes, so I'm not sure, but we'll see if we can also fit in some important considerations about doing wills and also amending wills. So firstly, we'll talk about what is a will. A will is a legal document which directs what happens to your estate after your death. So what is an estate? Estate is the legal term meaning assets and possessions after your death. So it can mean things like motor vehicles, property, your home, investment properties, bank accounts, jewellery, gold bullion, boats, all sorts of things. Whatever you own forms part of your estate, with a few exceptions, after your death. So the will directs what happens to your estate after your death. Why is a will important? Well, firstly, it is the best and in many cases the only way to ensure that your estate or assets are distributed in the way that you want them to be. So you work very hard throughout your life to build your wealth. Most people would want to have a say in what happens to your wealth after you pass away. And the will is basically that document which does that. Another reason why wills are important is you can choose your beneficiaries. So the beneficiaries are the people who receive something from your estate. We also choose our executors, or a wasi in Arabic. The executor is the person who pays the funeral expenses and the debts, and then distributes the balance to the beneficiaries. We also appoint guardians for our children. So this is a very important issue for Muslims, because you'd imagine if something happens to you and your partner, You can no longer care for your children because you're no longer around. So if you haven't appointed a guardian for your children, essentially what will happen is the Department of Child Protection will need to step in and put your child or children with a family. Now, we don't know what family that will be or how they'll be raised, so it's a very important issue for Muslims. We also specify how we wish to be buried. So, for example, if you've purchased a plot at the new Smithfield Cemetery or at Centennial Park or at Al Khalid, you can specify that is where you wish to be buried. You can specify how the process is to occur. We might think that our family knows what is to happen, but you never know. Allahu Alam, we don't know what's going to happen in the future and whether our family are going to be around. So we can specify how we wish to be buried. What happens if you haven't done a will? Well, you would die intestate. Intestate is the legal term for when a person passes away without writing a will. And the issues that this causes is that the law of intestacy applies, which is a strict order of what is to happen to your assets. It's typically spouse, children, parents, siblings, grandparents, aunties and uncles, and that type of thing. What it is not is it's not the Islamic. It's not consistent with the Islamic distributions, the mirath. It's not consistent at all. So it's not the end of the world, because if you didn't have a will, arguably your assets would go to family, but it wouldn't go in accordance with Islamic principles. If you happen to be an immigrant, you've come to Australia from another country and you don't have family, you need to be aware that there's a chance that your assets could go to the state, to the government, because you can imagine the chances of our authorities making inquiries as to what relatives exist in some country town in Pakistan or Sri Lanka or Syria. Very, very unlikely. So for those people who don't have family here, it's an even more important reason as to why you should do wills. Another issue is if something happens to you and you don't have a will, all your assets will be frozen. None of your family will be able to access bank accounts or buy or sell properties in your name or deal with your affairs, because those assets will be frozen, and the only way you can resolve that issue is if you apply to the court, make an application to appoint an administrator, and that will cost a lot of money and it will take a lot of time, and it's a bit of a heartache. It will cause headaches for your family. It's not an easy process. So just a quick mention of will kits. If you go to the post office, you'll see a will kit. Sometimes you can see DIY kits. Just be mindful, whilst I still think doing a will yourself is better than not doing a will at all, just be careful, because these will kits don't inquire about your circumstances. They don't inquire about what bank accounts you have, what property you have in your name or in joint names, whether you've got a family trust. So if you go into a will yourself, you just need to be exceptionally careful, because if you make a mistake, no one will know about that mistake until after your death, and then that mistake needs to be fixed by lawyers. So your family would need to basically get a lawyer to make an application and fix the problems. And that can be very stressful and very expensive. So if you can afford to get a lawyer to write your will, that is preferred. It doesn't matter which lawyer, but that's the preferred option. If you can't, then you can still write a will yourself, but as I said, you have to be exceptionally careful. Now, we'll move on just to some important considerations you need to take into account. So, first of all, marriage. A lot of people don't know this, but marriage revokes a will. So if you do a will and then you get married, the will's not worth anything. It's not worth the paper it's written on because it's been revoked. Divorce can revoke parts of the will. If your circumstances change, you may need to amend your will. So, for example, you have more children, or someone passes away, or you start a family trust or a commercial structure, you may need to amend your will. So something to keep in mind. The other point I'll make is not all assets are included in your estate. So we're talking about estate before, which is all your assets and possessions. Some things may not fall into your estate. Things like superannuation, and Brother Muhammad Baig is going to be talking a little bit later about whether you've done a binding nomination or not. Super may or may not fall into your estate. Family trust assets, commercial business assets don't fall into your estate. So something to keep in mind. So we've talked about what is a will, why is it important. So now we'll talk about an Islamic will. So why should we as Muslims prepare wills? So fortunately, Imam Salam has just arrived, so he'll be talking about the importance from an Islamic perspective, but I may just provide a brief summary before we get to listen to the Imam about that issue. So firstly, in the Quran, in Surah Nisa, chapter 4, in verses 11 and 12, there are two very long ayahs which outline the mirath, the Islamic distributions to family members. And there are various fractions, and it's laid out. You're welcome to read it. I'm sure many of you have already read those ayahs. In verse 13, after the Quran lays out the mirath, verse 13 says, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Tilka hududullah, wa man yuti Allah wa rasuluhu yudkhilhu jannah. Which basically means these are the limits, the rules set by Allah. Those who choose to follow them will be admitted to Jannah. So it's a commandment. It's a very important direction commandment to us to follow the Islamic distributions. We then have the hadith, and in Sahih Bukhari, book 51, on the authority of Abdullah bin Umar. The Prophet ﷺ says, "ما حق امرأ مسلم له شيئا يوصى فيه يبيت ليلتين إلا وصيته عنده مكتوبة," which basically means that if you have assets, you are not to let 2 nights pass without writing a will about those assets. So we have the authority of the Quran in relation to the Islamic distributions, and then we have the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which directs us to write wills. So it's incredibly important for Muslims. It's important for all Australians to write wills, but for us Muslims, we have a higher responsibility, a higher threshold to be writing wills. What's in an Islamic will? So firstly, debts and funeral expenses are paid. Okay, very important. Even in the law here in Australia, debts are always paid first before there's any distribution of the remainder. But Islamically, we must pay debts. Things like unpaid zakat can also be included in a will, and I often include them in wills that I do for Muslims. So debts and funeral expenses are paid. Then we have the mirath, which is basically the Islamic distributions, which I'll give a very brief summary on in a second. I touched on this before, but we can appoint guardians for our children. So if something were to happen to you and your partner, you can appoint a family member, a very close friend potentially, to look after your children should something happen to you both. We also include Islamic burial provisions. I mentioned it before, so if you've purchased a plot in, Smithfield Cemetery or Al-Khalil, you can specify that, so there's no confusion. Your family knows exactly where you were to be buried, just in case they don't already know, and you want to be buried in an Islamic manner. So as a guide, this is purely as a guide, we don't have time to go through examples, but basically, and I always encourage you to seek advice from an imam or a sheikh in regards to Islamic distributions. But basically we have some fractions which are found in Surah Nisa. And some of the examples are a mother and a father, typically, not always, but they typically receive 1/6 of the estate. Sometimes a father and mother can receive more than that, depending on who's in the family. And the important thing with Islamic distributions is that the distributions change depending on who is in your family. So it can get complicated. A husband will typically receive a quarter or a half if there's no children. A wife typically receives an eighth or a quarter if there are no children. Mother, father, husband and wife are fixed inheritors. They always receive a fixed share, which can change depending on the circumstances, but it's generally considered a fixed. They are fixed inheritors. We then have residuary inheritors, which are usually the children. Children will receive the balance after the fixed inheritors are accounted for. Again, just by way of an example, as a guide, if there's one daughter, just one daughter, as per Surah Nisa in the Quran, a daughter will receive half of the estate, 50%. If there are two or more daughters, they will receive 2/3 of the estate. If there's sons and daughters, sons will receive 2 portions, daughters 1 portion, but they receive an equal amount within their class. So all sons receive an equal share, all daughters receive an equal share, but the sons receive 2 portions, daughters 1 portion. And just as a reminder, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "Ar-rijal qawwamun 'ala an-nisa." Men are responsible to look after the women in their family. So the sisters, daughters, mother, the additional portion comes with responsibility. I've concluded what I wanted to say in regards to wills. So we covered wills, Islamic wills, important considerations for wills, very, very briefly, because I think it's important. In addition to wills, there are 2 other documents which you should be aware of. One is called an Advanced Care Directive. These 2 documents apply before death, but if you lose your mental capacity, if you become very unwell and you cannot make decisions, these documents kick in. As opposed to the will only applies after death, okay? The Advanced Care Directive deals with medical care and care arrangements. So very quickly, a Muslim can specify who they want to look after them, what medical care they may or may not want, and I recommend you get advice from an imam in regards to what's permissible, but things like, if the doctors can't do anything for you, you could potentially specify that you don't want to be on a life support machine. For Muslims, you could record, for example, for sisters, they could record that they want their hijab to be maintained if they're put into an aged care home or another facility. Other Muslims can record that they want to be close to a mosque, or they want to eat halal food, or they want to be treated in a certain manner or be close to family. So these issues can be recorded in the Advanced Care Directive. Fortunately, you don't need a lawyer to do an Advanced Care Directive. You can get one to do it, but they're quite easy. You can download the form. It's free. There's an example form on the website, and that's the link there. Otherwise, just do a Google search, Advanced Care Directive, and you'll find that. It's a very important document. Finally, we've got powers of attorney. This is to do with financial affairs. So if, for example, you own an asset in your name, like a bank account or a car, or a home, and you become unwell, taken to hospital, you can't make decisions, your spouse, so husband, wife, children, will not be able to touch the bank account, they won't be able to sell the assets, they won't be able to do anything because it's in your name. So you either put them on the title or you do a power of attorney and you can give them the power to deal with those assets on your behalf. So again, this only applies if you lose capacity and it applies before death. That's probably all we have time for, but I'm always happy to answer any questions in question time at the end, or you're welcome to phone me if you have any other questions. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you to Brother Bilal. I'd now like to invite Imam Salam for a Quran recitation and some words on Islamic inheritances and debt clearances.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. As requested, inshallah, we'll start reciting some verses from Surah An-Nisa, and I'd love urge all brothers and sisters to revisit those verses, inshallah, with the translation, because those are extremely important, and that is quite clearly explains about the topic that we are discussing today, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. للرجال نصيب مما ترك الوالدان والأقربون، وللنساء نصيب مما ترك الوالدان والأقربون مما قل منه أو كثر نصيبا مفروضا. وإذا حضر القسمة أولو القربى واليتامى والمساكين فارزقوهم منه وقولوا لهم قولا معروفا. وليخشى الذين لو تركوا من خلفهم ذرية ضعافا خافوا عليهم فليتقوا الله وليقولوا قولا سديدا. إن الذين يأكلون أموال اليتامى ظلما إنما يأكلون في بطونهم نارا وسيصلون سعيرا. يوصيكم الله في أولادكم للذكر مثل حظ الأنثيين، فإن كن نساء فوق اثنتين فلهن ثلثا ما ترك، وإن كانت واحدة فلها النصف، ولأبويه لكل واحد منهما السدس مما ترك إن كان له ولد، فإن لم يكن له ولد وورثه أبواه فلأمه الثلث، فإن كان له إخوة فلأمه السدس من بعد وصية يوصي بها أو دين. آباؤكم وأبناؤكم لا تدرون أيهم أقرب لكم نفعا، فريضة من الله، إن الله كان عليما حكيما. ولكم نصف ما ترك أزواجكم إن لم يكن لهن ولد، فإن كان لهن ولد فلكم الربع مما تركن من بعد وصية يوصين بها أو دين، ولهن الربع مما تركتم إن لم يكن لكم ولد، فإن كان لكم ولد فلهن الثمن مما تركتم من بعد وصية توصون بها أو دين. وإن كان رجل يورث كلالة أو امرأة وله أخ أو أخت فلكل واحد منهما السدس، فإن كانوا أكثر من ذلك فهم شركاء في الثلث من بعد وصية يوصى بها أو دين غير مضار، وصية من الله، والله عليم حليم. تلك حدود الله، ومن يطع الله ورسوله يدخله جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها، وذلك الفوز العظيم. ومن يعص الله ورسوله ويتعد حدوده يدخله نارا خالدا فيها وله عذاب مهين. صدق الله العظيم. Now these verses from Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4 in the Quran, verses 7 to 14. And some parts of these verses were explained by Brother Bilal in relation to explain on the Mirath and Wasiyah. So these verses, just to talk about that in general, firstly we need to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us in this world for a purpose, and that is to worship Him. That means living our life in accordance with Allah's commandment. And that covers everything in life, not only the masjid or zakah or the 5 pillars of Islam. And actually in Islam, all the teachings of Islam are divided or put into 3 categories. Number 1 is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we call it ibadat, worship. Then the second level comes the mu'amalat, which is dealings, which happens between people in our relationship with others. And then the third one is akhlaq, manners or etiquette of life. And these 3, if one is missing, then Islam of a person becomes incomplete. So we need to take every 3 of those areas seriously, and we need to firstly educate ourselves. And this is the session, alhamdulillah, organized, and we thank those brothers who organized this. And this is the way that we should come together, learn, spend time. Because if we don't understand, then there are 2 problems. One is we won't be able to fulfill our obligation to Allah as Muslims. Secondly, we won't be able to defend our religion when people put questions, and people have right to ask questions. Okay, and this is living in this part of the world, we definitely face many questions, and there are questions coming, and we come across with in relation to al-mirath as well, which is to do with the wealth. Now, in Islam, there are 5 essentials that we need to take care of that, and we have to put equal importance on all of those things. And it's called the maqasid al-sharia, the objectives of Islamic law. And Imam Ash-Shatibi rahimahullah has written a book called Al-Muwafaqat, and he puts them all together, and all the ulama agrees on those points. 5 essentials, that means 5 things that we must take care of, and it is all equally important. Number 1 is life. It is our duty to look after and take care of our life. Okay, and that comes and it includes everything, like the nutrition that we need to take, the means of survival, what is allowed, what's not allowed, halal, haram, all these comes within that. Second one is deen, our religion. It's our duty to look after and care for our religion as well. Third one is our wealth as well, and I'm not talking about the order is not important here, it's 5 things. The wealth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with wealth, and those are important things. And Prophet ﷺ said that there are 2 questions everyone will be asked on the Day of Judgment. And in another narration, he said, no one will be allowed to move on the Day of Judgment when you get resurrected, waiting for the judgment. No one will be allowed to move from his spot until he is asked 5 things. 2 questions out of 5 are about wealth. Where did you earn it and where did you spend it? Or how did you earn it, where did you spend it? So earning from halal, spending on halal, both are questions that we will be facing. And the 4th one is our honor and dignity. This is also important. And number 4 is our progeny, family, culture, you can say that. These are our duties, and we have right to protect and we are not only, it's not only right, it's our responsibility as well, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will question us on those 5 things. So, wealth, now today's topic is about the wealth. Now it's very important. Every human being, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him, her with ability, okay, intellect, and interest and love. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is instilled in every one of us the love of this world. It's something like whether it doesn't matter if you be a religious person, non-religious, every person likes to have a good life, comfortable life. If you take a sheikh who is very zahid, we call it, who detached himself from this worldly life, and show it to him like, I want to offer you this Mercedes-Benz, please, like, as a gift. He will never say no. He will appreciate it. It's human nature. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. Do not forget your share from this world. That means we have to live, we have to earn, we have to strive, and try our best to make our life as comfortable as possible. Keeping in view those obligations, paying our zakat on time, okay, not showing off, not bragging about our wealth, okay, looking after the poor and needy, giving charity, and also doing the wasiyah properly and whatever is required on our wealth. Now, our wealth is ours as long as we are alive. Okay? After we die, then it automatically passes to other people. We have no right on our wealth after we die, except in wasiyah. Even in mirath we have no right. We can't do anything about it. That's why a person cannot exclude a family member from the inheritance. Can't say that I don't want to give inheritance to you. Except there are Islamic ways that where a person gets automatically ousted from receiving mirath. For example, if the receiver of mirath has actually killed his own father, like it happens, okay, then la waritha li qatil. Prophet said that a qatil, a murderer, cannot receive inheritance from his father or mother, okay, or someone who changes his religion, for example, gets out of Islam. Those are the things. Otherwise, a father cannot exclude his son, his daughter, okay, because he doesn't like or isn't happy. So I don't want to give my mirath. That is something you have no right. That's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained, and those verses clearly states. Likewise, a person cannot exclude a female from the mirath. Unfortunately, which used to be the case before Islam. And we look into, after the French Revolution, now people start talking about the rights of women. Now it's been just a century or two, less than 2 centuries ago. Okay, but what about Islam? Islam has guaranteed the right of women 1400 years ago. Before Islam, there was no right. Women were inherited. If a husband dies, the wife would be inherited by a member of the family, and she would have no right to marry herself or move on in her own life. It was on the family, whether they allow her or one of the family members marries her, or they keep her that she stayed at home. That was the case before Islam. That's called pre-Islamic time. And even in Christianity, in Judaism, they had no right to ownership. That was they have distorted the teaching of Islam likewise. But Islam came to guarantee the rights of women. That's why this ayah, لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا تَرَكَ الْوَالِدَانِ وَالْأَقْرَبُونَ, Sa'id bin Jubair radiallahu anhu, who is one of the tabi'in, says, these ayahs came down when Sa'd radiallahu anhu, one of the companion gets martyred in the Battle of Uhud, leaving behind 2 daughters, and the daughter, his brother actually takes over all of his wealth after him. So the mother of the 2 daughters come to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She comes and complains, Ya Rasulullah, my husband died while doing jihad with you in the Battle of Uhud. Now they are left with nothing because their uncle have taken everything, and they have to get married, and that requires wealth. So Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that has to be given to them. Okay, for them it's just so that when you have 2 or more, then they share 2/3 of the wealth. Okay, except that if there was a wasiyah done, then that has to be taken into consideration. Again, there is a limitation in Islam that a person cannot give a will more than 1/3. So Prophet ﷺ, in another case, visiting Sa'ad radiallahu anhu, he was very sick, and then he said, Ya Rasulullah, I am a wealthy person, I want to give away, I want to give all my wealth as a charity. The Prophet said, no, you can't do that. And he said, how about half of it? He said, no. And how about 1/3 of it? Prophet said, 1/3 is still big, but 1/3 is okay. He gave that, permission for that. And he said, at the end, after this, it would be better for you to live. It's not good that you give away all of your wealth in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, leaving your children, your family members, after you, beggars. You are forcing them to become needy and poor, that they have to go out to the people asking for help. That's not Islam. So you can give from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the highest limit is 1/3, and the wasiyah is there. Now, in relation to the way of mirath and wasiyah, this is a very big topic. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned that it's called al-fara'id, al-mirath. There are many other terminologies used for that. And the Prophet said there are 3 knowledge that everyone must learn. Kitabullah, Kitabullah wa sunnatu muttaba'a wa ilmu al-mirath, kama qala alayhi salatu wasalam. The knowledge of the Quran is important for the Muslim to learn, and knowledge of the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And the third one, he said, ilmu al-mirath. Like ilmu al-mirath is part of the Quran, part of the Sunnah. Okay, Quran is without ilmu al-mirath is incomplete. Sunnah without ilm al-mirath is incomplete. But Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam specified it as the third category. Learn Quran, learn the Sunnah, and also learn al-mirath. And he did not only say learn. Learn and teach it to your children. And among the prophecies Prophet made was that among the teachings of Islam, the first knowledge which will be removed from the hearts of people, which will be less practiced towards the end of this world, is the practice of ilm al-mirath. And this is the truth in our time. How many percentage of Muslims do really abide by the requirement of mirath? If somebody dies, Muslim family I'm talking about, children, male, female, okay, mixed children there, they would all want to go to the court, say that, you know, I want to have my right, and they want equal rights. And they think that getting $100 there, $50 for a boy, $50 for a girl, that is the equal way of the distribution. According to how we think, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that's not. That's not equal. Equal is when a boy gets 2 shares and a girl takes 1. In the figurative way, it sounds like it looks that boy is getting more, but female is getting less. But Allah says, لا تدرون آباؤهم وأبناؤكم لا تدرون أيهم أقرب لكم نفعا فريضة من الله. So your parents, your children, do not know which one is more beneficial for them in this distribution. If it were left for the people to think about it, for the wisdom of humanity, okay, you go ahead, you decide what's the best way. There wouldn't be any justice done. No one would come up with something which would make everyone, like, you know, right. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken this responsibility on himself, mentioning every fine detail about the rights of the inheritors, who receives what. And in these verses that are recited, it talks about the children's, how much they receive, a boy, a girl, father, mother, and a female, one daughter alone, which Brother Bilal explained, a half, and husband, wife, and someone who has no relative, kalala, a woman who has no other relative left, she's the only one. What happens? Then after those details mentioned, because we have no time to discuss everything, because that is something like case by case, if there's any issue happening, and a Muslim should go with the Islamic way, that the best way is coming to a person, not only any sheikh. Not every scholar knows about it. It's a very a complicated knowledge. It requires lots of understanding, lots of maths, okay, and that requires that, you know, you have to be just. Otherwise, a little mistake in your judgment, in your decision, could take you to the hell. Because Allah Subhanahu wa Taala said at the end, "Tilka hududullah." Those are the guidelines. Those are the borders that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has set for you. Okay, if you obey that, as what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala laid down for you, if you obey as Allah explained, then what is that? وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ, whoever obeys Allah and obeys the Messenger will enter Jannah because of their obedience. Okay, and that is the great success. After that, Allah says, وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ, and whoever disobeys Allah, okay, says, okay, I'm not happy with this, I want to go with my way, because I feel that my right will not be given fully to me. So you are putting Allah's law down, and then you want to go somewhere else where you think that you can get a little bit more. That is called isyan, disobedience to Allah. You may get something in this world, but when we face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whoever disobeys Allah and His Rasul, وَيَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَهُ, whoever transgresses the set limit that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made, يُدْخِلْهُ نَارًا خَالِدًا فِيهَا, Allah will put him into the hellfire and he will abide there forever. Khalidan fiha is a very scary point in Islam. A Muslim could go to the hell because of the sins, but will never stay there forever. Okay, but in this very matter, whoever goes against Allah's rule, Allah says Khalidan fiha, that is you are actually rejecting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's law. That means what? You are acting kufr while you may be praying, fasting, giving zakah. So خالد فيها وله عذاب مهين, and he will have a very degrading, humiliating punishment. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. So it's just a general point of view. So if you have any question, inshallah, in the question and answer session, specific points we will discuss, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan.
Jazakallah Salam. I'd now like to welcome Brother Muhammad Uzair Bey to share his knowledge on superannuation investments and how we as Muslims can go about such a topic most Islamically.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you for coming, and thanks Brother Jamil for inviting me over here to give talk on Superfund estate planning. So this is just a disclaimer that the information I'm going to provide you is purely factual in nature and does not take into account of your personal objectives, situations or needs. The information is objectively ascertainable and therefore does not constitute financial product advice. Should you require financial product advice, please consult with a financial advisor who is authorized to provide such advice. I'm not a financial advisor, I'm an accountant and SMSF specialist. So if you have got any question regarding the super funds, establishment of super funds, you should seek a financial advisor. Okay? The second disclaimer is that today I am standing in front of you in my own right, and I'm not representing my company, which is CMS Chartered Accountants and Financial Advisory. So Superfund and sole purpose test. So what happened almost 4 or 5 decades ago, government decided to come up with the idea and introduce the retirement savings scheme. So people can finance their retirement. So in 1980s they started a retirement scheme, and there are 3 to 4 different types of super funds they introduced in 80s. One of them was retail fund, the other one was industry fund, and then in 1992 they introduced the self-managed super funds. So the sole purpose of all these funds are that people can support their financial needs when they retire. So these all funds are regulated by ASIC, APRA and Australian Taxation Office. And super funds are not limited to retirement savings only, they can also be used for tax purpose, tax saving tools and your estate planning. So as I said, there are different types of superannuation funds that were introduced by the government in 1980. One of them was retail funds. These funds were offered by all the major banks, financial institutions and wealth management companies like Westpac, ANZ, AMP, etc. Industry funds are specific, used to be specific for the specific industries, but now they are open to public as well, like Australian Super, Plum, etc. And self-managed super fund, of course, it's a private fund managed by a trustee themselves. So they are responsible for running that fund. So it's a very broad area. So rather than discussing each and everything and tax consequences and tax planning, I thought to pick up key areas which are relevant to this particular session. That includes importance of binding benefit nomination, ethical investments, super asset triple asset scheme rollover act, and estate planning. I think so Brother Bilal and Brother Salam have already discussed about estate planning. So super funds and binding death benefit nomination. So one thing that is common in all these funds are your death binding nominations. This is a piece of document which dictates your wishes once you are no more. Okay. So there are 2 types of death binding nomination. One is lapsing and other one is non-lapsing. So the non-lapsing ones stay there unless you execute or prepare the new binding death benefit nomination, whereas non-lapsing is the one which will stay there unless you have the new document in place, and lapsing will lapse in 3 years. So what is binding death benefit nomination? Binding death benefit nomination is a notice given by superfund members to the trustees of their superfund requiring a death benefit to be paid to the members' nominated dependents or legal personal representative. As I said, that this is the document which dictates your wishes when you are no more. Okay? Sometimes people think that if they have got a will, they don't need this document. This is not correct. Your will, as Brother Bilal mentioned, that deal with your estate, whereas your binding death benefit nomination is the document which dictates who will get the benefits when you passed away from your super fund. So what are valid binding death benefit nomination? For binding death benefit nomination to be valid, there are certain rules and conditions. The first and the foremost is that your binding death benefit nomination should align with your trustee. So what your trustee allow can only be put in your binding death benefit nominations. Okay. It must be in writing, must be signed by and dated by the members of the fund, and in the presence of 2 adults aged 18 and over, which are not beneficiary of your super fund. I'll give you the example. I prepared the case study to make this session more interactive. The person nominated must be a defendant or the legal person relative of the member. The governing rules, as I mentioned, the governing rules is your trustee, so it should dictate the terms of your binding death benefit nomination. It's preferred that your nomination have minimum 2-tier directions. So sometimes people just put one thing that, okay, 100% to my wife, and that is it. What is next? If she passed away, what's going to happen? So it should be 2 or 3-tier binding death benefit nomination. Advantages of a valid binding death benefit nomination. Some of the advantages are that certainty that death benefit will be paid in accordance with the deceased member wishes. Less likelihood of a successful challenge by disgruntled beneficiaries, and it happened a lot. In Australia, it happens a lot. I look after $18-20 million funds, and once the member passed away, these things end up in the court because they don't have a valid or properly executed binding death benefit nomination in place. More timely distribution of your assets to your beneficiary. If you have structured your will to achieve certain outcomes, that your binding nomination should be addressed to your estate. This is the link between your will and your super fund. As I said, that your will dictate, take care of your estate, whereas your binding death benefit nomination takes care of your super funds assets. So you can be sure that your superannuation benefit will flow into your estate and allow the estate planning strategy to be fulfilled. Wills and binding death benefit nomination. I've already discussed this bit that the will is already a legally binding document that nominates who should receive what from your estate. It does not apply to your superannuation fund. Superannuation fund is completely different than your estate. Okay. In short, we cannot override your valid binding death benefit nomination. So if people think that they have got a will and that will dictate your terms, as far as your super fund is concerned, no, that's not the case. So the question is, how many of you have binding death benefit nomination in place? When is the last time you reviewed your nominations? If your nominations properly executed or not? If your circumstances were changed in the last 3 years, have you updated your beneficiary details? So these are the questions you need to ask yourself. These are the very important questions. Sometimes this is the biggest assets you have got when you are no more. Okay? So you have to be very careful when drafting this document. And I would suggest to review this document after every year, or if not, if you can't do that, after every 3 years, to see whether your information is up to date or not. So the next part of this presentation is super fund and ethical investments. Okay. Unfortunately, with retail fund and industry fund, you don't have much options and you don't have authority to dictate your terms. So you have to stick what those organizations are or what your super fund provider is providing you. So they have got set portfolios and they will offer you, okay, do you want to invest in high growth or do you want to invest in low growth or do you want to invest in middle growth or cash at bank? That is it. You don't know what's going on behind those portfolios. What are the investments which are part of those portfolios? And trust me, you will be amazed if you see the list of investments you have in your retail funds, industry funds. 20%, 15 to 20% of them were invested in a haram way, unfortunately. Okay? So invest responsibly. People say gamble responsibly, you have to invest responsibly. Okay? Seven profit industries where you can't invest. Financial services that features transactions based on interest, riba, and insurance providers. Companies whose core business involves alcohol, pork, product, or other meat that is not slaughtered according to Sharia. The tobacco industry and manufacturers of illegal drugs, gambling, weapon manufacturers, certain sectors of entertainment industry, including pornography, cloning. And once you have got those places, I would suggest to visit those places, and you will find that 10 to 15% of your investments are invested in one or two of those industries. So before going to the case study, people often question me that, okay, how do we know that our investments were made in the halal products or in halal areas or halal sectors or ethical sectors? I would suggest to contact your retail industry fund and ask them that, yes, I know that my investment is in high growth, but I want you to see the list of assets where my hard-earned cash is going or invested. They will provide you with a list of things. Visit those companies to see what their core businesses are. If they are financial institutions like Westpac, ANZ, of course, they are earning interest and they are distributing those interests. Okay, lots of companies invest in weapon manufacturing, which is again prohibited. So I would highly recommend to go back to your retail funds and industry funds and ask them to provide you with a list of assets they are holding on your behalf in your portfolio. The other alternative to all these things is your self-managed super fund, because you are so responsible, you are the trustee of the fund, you know where I'm investing my money. Okay, so the alternative is to have your self-managed super fund, but for self-managed super fund, there are lots of legalities. I would suggest to seek financial advice from your financial advisor before making any decision. So this is the case study which I presented last year over here. I made some changes because there were changes in legislation as well in the past year or so. So Ahmed and Amna are husband and wife and started their professional career back in 1990s as a doctor and professor respectively. Ahmed's employer started contributing the super guarantee contribution into one of the industry funds. Amna requested her employer to contribute her super guarantee contribution into one of the Sharia compliant funds. As at 30th of June 2020, Ahmed and Amna have the member balance of 1 million and 800,000 respectively. So they've got the total balance of 1.8 million between husband and wife. In 2021, at the age of 55, Ahmed and Amna decided to start their self-managed super fund, A&M Family Superannuation Fund, with a total balance of 1.8 million. Couple has got two children, Abdullah 22 and Khadija 17. They both are beneficiary of A&M Family Superannuation Fund. Funds were transferred from their retail funds to their self-managed super fund on 1st of 7, 2021. So in 2021, they decided to start their own self-managed super fund instead of entering with the retail industry fund. So they started their self-managed super fund with the total balance of 1.8 million. As the Amna super fund was invested with the Sharia compliant fund for the past 30 years, most of her earnings and gain comes from the property development, gold, mineral, etc., whereas Ahmed's earning and income were driven from various sectors, including investments in financial institutions and weapon manufacturing. So they are the two members, husband and wife. They have got a balance of $1,800,000. Ahmed has got 98% of his investment in other sectors and 2% in unethical investments like financial institutions and weapon manufacturers. Amna has got 800,000 in her balance in her member account. 100% of her investments were ethical because we were invested in a Sharia compliant fund, so no issues. If life permits, Ahmed and Amna are both planning to retire from workforce when they turn 67 in 2032. Based on the fund performance, market indicators, and their investments in diversified portfolio, they are expecting the retirement savings of $3 million to $3.5 million when they retire in 2032. So case facts are their income is halal because one is doctor, one is professor, no issues. All the investments in A&M Family Super Fund are ethical investments because they invested in property development and things like that. They are not earning any interest on cash at bank. This is another thing which everyone needs to look at. They don't have life or TPD insurance in their super fund, so they don't have terminal and permanent disability insurance or life insurance in their super fund, so no insurance in the fund. Their benefit should be split 50-50 between Abdullah and Khadija upon the death of Ahmed and Amna. So they decided that once we pass away, then our total member balance or total wealth, the super fund, should be divided 50-50 between their two kids, Abdullah and Khadija. So, do you think their retirement benefit are 100% halal from Islamic perspective? Anyone?
Benefit 100% halal from Islam? No. Because Ahmed got 2%.
Exactly. So though their A&A family superannuation fund is halal because it was invested in a halal way, but the money transfer from the retail industry fund has got 2% halal investments in it. And these funds normally go to your next generation and generation after. So imagine.
What about the weapon industry? Is it halal?
Yes, it is halal. Okay. Because 2% of their investment comes from the retail fund, which was invested by the retail funds.
No, I'm asking about weapon industry. Is it haram?
It is haram.
If I'm working with it?
This is something brother
What was that?
Salam can answer for it.
Weapon.
Huh?
Okay. This depends on in which country against who you use that weapon is going to be used. Sometimes it could be farz that you have to give it in a right way, but sometimes it could be haram. So it's better to avoid in your situation if you could. Because whenever you have any doubtful thing in Islam says avoid it to be on the safe side.
Okay. And there's a question which final death benefit nomination you believe is valid, nomination 1 or nomination 2. So I'm showing you 2 nominations now. Okay. I told you for this document to be valid, it should be executed in front of the witnesses aged 18 and over, which are not a related party or not a beneficiary of those assets. The third thing was it should be dated. Fourth thing, it should be executed or prepared as per the trustee, the rules in the trustee. Okay, so this is the nomination 1 made by member Ahmed. Okay. He said that if I passed away, 100% of my benefit goes to my spouse Amina. If she failed to survive me by 28 days, then the benefit should split 50-50 between our children, Abdullah and Khadija. Okay. Signed by member Ahmed, signed by Amna, signed by Khadija. Okay. And then again signed by the witnesses Khadija, Ahmed, and the member. So this is one nomination.
Just to interrupt there, like when you say 50-50,
Yes.
so you may say, but after that it has to go again under the miras calculation. It may not be like 50-50.
No, if you put this as a 50-50, then this document is for your super fund.
Yeah, that's all the legality. Yeah.
It will go 50-50. So there is a way to bring your will into it, and then your will dictate the terms. So rather than putting all these instructions over there, you just put to my legal personal representative, that is my state 100%. And this is how you will come into play.
Brother Muhammad, if someone wanted to, they could specify for the son 66.6% and then for the daughter 33.3%.
Yes. No issues. Yes. So this is nomination 1. Now nomination 2. Same document prepared by Ahmed. He specified that if passed away, 100% to my spouse Amna. If something happened to her, then 50% to my son Abdullah and 50% to my daughter Khadija. Signed by Qasim and Ali. Okay. The previous one was signed by Amna and Khadija. Okay. Dated 1st day of July 2021. Again witnessed by Qasim and Ali and signed by the member. So which one of those two you believe is valid final death benefit nomination? Number 2. Why? Because firstly, the first one was signed by Khadija and Amna. They both are the beneficiaries of the fund, so they can't sign. First thing. Secondly, Khadija is 17. She can only sign the document when she's 18 or over. In this case, she can't even sign the document because she's the beneficiary of the fund. And the third thing is that the first one was not dated. This one was dated. So this is the properly draft and executed documents. Okay. Now, Super SA Triple SS scheme. I put this slide to let you know because last year when we run this session over here in Vandana, people were asking me that we are the government employee and we can't transfer our fund to the self-managed super fund or any other retail fund. Because government invests all your money into the infrastructure and other government projects and they don't want people to leave the fund if they were employed by the government. But now, under the initiative took by the government, Your Super, Your Choice, from 30th of November 2022, all the triple SS schemes run by government, people who are the member of those funds can transfer those funds to the choice of your fund, either retail fund, industry fund, or self-managed super fund. Key elements of state planning, I think Brother Bilal and Brother Salam has already discussed these things. These are the important factors. Some you need to consider before your death and some after your death. Like probate, wills, power of attorney, advanced health care directives, and trust. So this is a key components of state planning. And every one of us should consider all these things in our life and put in writing once we are not here. Question and answer, we will discuss afterwards, I guess. Thank you, everyone.
Salam alaikum. That's car BJD, some Mercedes. Okay. No.
Jazakallah, Brother Muhammad. I'd now like to invite Brother Ahmed to speak to us about the Islamic Society's latest initiative at Salam Funeral Services.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. First of all, thank you very much for coming for this important live forum. Honestly, I didn't think it was that important for the community until I see it's very good turnout, alhamdulillah. I would like to thank Brother Bilal, Imam Abdul Salam, Brother Muhammad, Sister Ayan, Filza and Noor for organizing all this live topic. Salam Funeral Services, many of you are aware, during the last 2 years, the Islamic Society been working to secure a land for cemetery. That's because most of our Islamic section cemetery here in Adelaide are almost finished or nearly to be finished. The idea coming when Al Khalil Mosque raised the fee of the burial up to 12,500. I've got a call at that time from Brother Khalil Shaheen, is the owner of that mosque, and he said we are almost run out and we have to think about different places to find another Islamic section in anywhere here in Adelaide. At that time, we, as Islamic Society, we've been contacted many cemetery departments here, and we start looking what is the other Islamic section here in Adelaide, and we have found this almost or only 1,000 burial available for the Muslim community, especially that the last census showing that the population of the Muslim community is almost 40,000 people here in Adelaide. So that's why we have a big need to have the cemetery and the funeral services. When we start to have discussion with the Adelaide Cemetery Authority, we have found out that there is 2 projects here. The first project is the cemetery itself, and the second project is the funeral services. The Islamic cemetery, the cemetery itself, is talking about the land where we have a plot to secure for yourself or the family members. But the funeral services, we have found that most of the Islamic section cemetery here in Adelaide, they are used 80% funeral services. And when we start looking about the fees they are charging for the Muslim community, we have found this really bit high, between 3,000 to 5,000, just the funeral services. And I just want to explain here what this fee is going to be, why it is 3,000 to 5,000, and what we can offer for the Muslim community here in South Australia. The vision and mission of the funeral service is just to provide very dedicated services for the Muslim community in terms of funeral. And the Muslim community here in Adelaide, honestly, is one of the best Muslim community in all of Australia. Like during the last 12 years, been working with the Islamic Society. I can tell you the community here, the most generous community, the most community they're working together. When we have any project, we've got very well supported by the Muslim community here, and that's why we deserve to have as well funeral services respected to provide good service for the community. So this is the mission and vision behind all the funeral services at the moment. So when we talk funeral services, as you can see, you have to provide something called funeral directors, then transportation, the legal compliance, washing and shrouding, janaza prayer, providing paperwork on the day funeral, burial itself, registration of deaths with the registers of birth, death, and marriage, and at the end of the day, to give the condolences for the community. So all of them, we try to do it in one package, and it's called the Salam funeral services. And just to give you some differentiate between the Salam funeral services and between the SA Muslim funeral services, because as you know, during the last 2 years, other group of brothers, they have established a new organization called SA Muslim Funeral Services, and they are providing type of insurance. I don't know if I can quote the right way. Membership. Okay, so those for who cannot afford the fees of the plot, they can be membership in this group, and they can if someone passes away, they can afford they can help them with the fee. But this one is totally different things. So we are not here to do any kind of competition or anything. So it's just we complement each other. So when we start asking why the Muslim community they don't have this kind of services, the first department we ask is Adelaide Cemetery Authority, ACA. We ask them, okay, how we can establish a funeral service, and we thought at that time it's very complicated and very hard, and that's why no one so far has done it. But when we asked the ACA department, the first answer we got is very simple. You just apply for the business affair and have the name. So we thought why no one has applied for this name. They said after we apply the name, we have this big job, and that's why most of the people avoid to have this kind of services, because it is very I don't want to say it's complicated, but you need very dedicated people to work for it. And as you know, most of our project as Islamic Society, we rely a lot on volunteers, but this type of a project, we cannot rely on volunteers. We need really paid position people to look after it, because as I will show you after how really it's very important to have this kind of level. So we start with the funeral directors. The funeral directors are the people who receive the first call from the family when someone passed away, and start processing the process of the funeral. First of all, they want. So I think there is on the here. So first of all, the funeral director, as I mentioned before, is consultation with the family on the funeral arrangement and liaison with the cemetery on the details of the service. So when someone passed away, the family member, the first thing they have to do is just to contact the funeral directors. Secondly, the funeral directors start arrange the transportation. So far, as the Muslim community in SA, we don't have the transportation. We always rely on someone different department, different party to look after. But inshallah, I can tell you that soon, we are going to buy maybe hearse or van, okay, to be only for the Muslim community, inshallah. then, like as Brother Bilal mentioned about the legal compliance as well, we have to fill up a document. The first things we may get the certificate of death from the doctor or from the hospital. And I have one question for Brother Bilal now, because he mentioned before in the will, like the person can mention where to go, which cemetery. And I think we have to include it and inform our directors about this one, because we are not aware about this one until now. Thank you, Brother Bilal, for it. And then washing and showering. As you know, like the facility of the washing facility, most of you know that there is only one place at the Khalil Mosque. But during our research, we have found like many places for the washing facility as per Muslim instructions. There is one at the Freedom Funeral, there is one at the Blackwell Funeral Services, and inshallah the Islamic Society are willing to have one inshallah at Marian Mosque, because as you know we already bought a new land next to the mosque, so we are planning to have one place there. And here in Wandana, we're still like struggling to find where is the best place, because we have limited the spaces, especially the school here is like it's not the right space. Inshallah at the Smithfield, because we already signed the contract to have like a proper peppercorn leased land there. We are going to like build as well inshallah washing facility there. And we start looking for other places to make sure that all the areas here in South Stella are covered by the washing facility. So if in Marion we'll have one in the south, we have the one at Khalil is the east, west. Maybe we have someone here in the east, and in the north, inshallah, we have Smithfield. So this area will cover all the areas in South Australia. Janazah prayer, as you know, Janazah prayer should be led by our respected imams, and this because alhamdulillah we have the imams here, like they are when someone pass away, mashallah, all of them. They're willing to volunteer and lead the prayer for the janazah, so we have no issue with this one, inshallah. As well, providing paperwork on the day of funeral, like one of the important documents that you submitted to the, for example, as Islamic Society now, we are dealing with the ISSA, the Other Cemetery Authority. So before they start digging the place, the plot, they're asking about the kind of document, as I mentioned before, the death certificate. They may have like a document about the plot area if someone has already bought the plot from the Smithfield. So we have to submit that document with the name. And the other important thing that we don't have it with the other Islamic section cemetery is the recording. So recording is through the ACA. Once someone passes away, if you go to the website and just put the name of the distant people, like you can see the all information, where is the plot, when he passed away, and the location of exactly the cemetery. This is very important, and this list for at least next 50 years after like someone passed away. And in case if someone to renew the plot, they can still have the report there. The burial, like I'm going to mention to you exactly how many sections we have Islamic cemetery section in Adelaide. Of course, we have a Khalil Mosque. I think there is another 500 plot available there. We have Pasadena Centennial Cemetery. I think we have almost 200 Islamic section plot area there. We have Enfield is 200. West Terrace is only 15-1. Cheltenham, there is no one. And there is other like cemeteries belong to Adelaide Mosque at McLaren Vale. At the moment they are dealing with the Freedom Funeral, like for the funeral services. Inshallah, we are trying to communicate with them to see if they want to use our funeral service, and this, if they can collaborate with us, it will be the cheapest funeral in terms of the plot and the service at all, because we are providing almost like $1,500 for all these kind of services. The funeral provide between $3,000 and $5,000. So if the other mosque would like to collaborate with this one, so then McLaren Vale will be one of the cheapest cemetery in Adelaide. So after the burial, of course, you have to register the death, and then you can have the certificate of death through the consular affair settlement. And the last one will be the condolences services. As you know, alhamdulillah, or here in Islamic society, we have this place, the family can give the condolence. We have the Marin Mosque as well, and the Khalil Mosque as well. They offering the place for condolence. So we have 3 places. And soon, inshallah, when we build the mosque at Smithfield, we have another one. So we have another 4 places. Our funeral directors so far, so they are registered at Salam funeral service. So we have Imam Riyad Jazvin. Everyone knows he's the Imam of the Bosnian community, and he's located at Bosnian in West Lakes. Mashallah, he's very enthusiastic to work with this place, and he's the first person who put his hand up to help with this funeral director. We have brother Zohair, I think most of you know him, he's the property manager at Mary Mosque. We have brother Fateh Latifi, he's the cameraman, was here. Brother Masoud Amin as well, he's from Khalil Mosque. We have a brother Abdul Qayyum. Brother Abdul Qayyum, he's Imam as well, graduated from Al-Azhar, and he worked so hard with Sister Filza on the policy of the Islamic cemetery. So I'm going to explain a bit about the policy as well. And we have Sister Ifa Latifa. So the policy we are generating with the Salam funeral service is, if anyone would like to know the process of this all services plus what's happened on the burial plot itself on the time of the funeral, you can have all this policy, and this all policy are being endorsed by our Imam Council here. So that's why you are going to see something unique in Smithfield, especially because even the type of the grave is going to be all the same based on the Sharia and the Sunnah, inshallah. We are not going to have different headstones or how they build the graveyard. So it's going to be all the same based on the Sharia, inshallah. And this Islamic policy is going to be available for anyone who wants to use our funeral services. So anyone can have a look before they sign up any application with the funeral service, especially a Salam. So this is the type of the masajid we are dealing with. So of course, Marin Mosque, Wandana Masjid, and Khalil Masjid. And we have different as well station similar to this station at Marin at Wandana, inshallah. And of course, this project cannot be run without volunteer. We have our funeral directors, but of course, we need a lot of volunteers. So if anyone would like to be volunteer with this noble project, please you can register yourself with the Islamic Society and help, inshallah. As well, our brothers, we are here to receive any kind of questions. Is there answer the question now or after?
No. Let's do the Q&A now.
Now?
Yeah.
Okay. So inshallah, I will ask all our panelist members to come, inshallah, for the question and answer, and inshallah, Sister Ayan will help with the facilitation. Thank you very much.
No.
So we'll start off with any questions that you might have, and we'll take it from there. Any panelists can answer. So any questions that you guys might have today.
Sorry. This question for this all 5 of you guys and 4 of you guys. I was just thinking, is it possible for us to communicate a tool. People who live in Port Augusta, Waiala, just anywhere in out of South Australia. A person who died like a couple of weeks ago in Mildura, a person who is in wheelchair, he can't come to access to this part of the world, this part of the state. So you can email a common email for you guys, and whoever it is having that issues, and you can answer for that. And that's a common tool. There's some couple of community fellows, they are superstars of the ITs, and I spoke to them in pre-session with them, and they are willing to take the cost, and they are willing to take the hoist as a communicate a tool. Is that possible? Without you concern me for me, it's for the whole entire woman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Jalil, for this important question. Actually, yes, we had this issue, I think 2 weeks ago. Someone already bought a plot at Smithfield, and his mother passed away at Mildura because they've been visiting Mildura. And they called us as Islamic Society in order to help to transport the body from Mildura to here. And because we didn't have the car at that time, start to communicate with the other transportation services in Melbourne in order to help. It was a bit complicated to get the car here. The family decided to get the body in their car, but actually, as you know, it's not legal because they need as well document from the police to have this kind of to release the body there. So they ended to bury the mother there in Mildura. But of course, thank you for the offer, especially for your IT people. So as you know, this is our first time we announced about the Salam funeral services. So this, as if the launch of this funeral services, we need a lot of help. As I mentioned before, we need a lot of volunteers. So the type of this communication between us and the other people living in the remote areas such as Port Augusta, Waiala, Port Lincoln, or any other remote area, inshallah we are going to think on how we can help them. And when we have our own transportation, it's going to make it very easy if any member from that remote area would like to move to Adalat, inshallah. Inshallah we are going to do it. Thank you.
Salam alaikum. I've got two questions. One is for Brother there. What's your name? Sorry. Ahmed. The first one is you mentioned about the cemetery in Macraran, but I understand also there is a cemetery in Murray Beach. Are you in talk with that as well, or you just started with the Macraran Bar? And the second question is for Imam Salam. When you are reading the surah there, and brother as well in his presentation, Brother Ibrahim mentioned that the father or the mother, I think these parents need to get 1/6 of the in the mirror. Is it for both sides, the wife and the husband, or is this, if you can clarify that? 1/6, I think you will put there.
Okay. Just quickly about the Murray Bridge. Yes, we have land belonging to the Islamic Society at Murray Bridge. In 2015, we had approached the council there at Murray Bridge in order to see if we can have that land as a cemetery. We got rejection at that time because the land is very close to the expressway, and they didn't allow us to have it as a cemetery. So there is no Islamic cemetery at Murray Bridge.
Okay, if I correctly understood your question, is if a person dies and he leaves behind wealth, so his parents and also his wife's parents you're talking about. No, it will be only to the person's biological parents only. So
if the wife dies...
Wife dies and then her parents. So it's the biological parents of the person. So the in-laws don't they don't receive anything, basically.
What about if their parents are not in Australia? They are in...
It doesn't matter where they live, as long as they are alive. One of the conditions of receiving inheritance, the person who is receiving must be alive. In case, like sometimes a father dies, and then his son also died before him, but he has his grandson. So grandson replaces the son. Okay, but the place is not important. So wherever the person is, he will be the rightful inheritor.
And the person who is inherited must be also dead, because nowadays we've got troubles.
What is that?
The person who is being inherited must also be dead.
Yeah, the death is important. Yes. Okay, if you cannot, then in that case, otherwise, when you give to someone who is alive and you're alive, that is a gift that you're giving to yourself. So mirath comes only after it becomes mirath after the death of the person who leaves the asset, and the receiver must be alive when he's receiving. And there's one important difference between wasiyah and mirath, because this is talking both in one session. So wasiyah is a totally different subject from mirath. Mirath is something you don't, as I mentioned, that it will automatically be discussed or distributed according to the Quran as said. But wasiyah is different. You have right to deal with your wealth even after your death by making the wasiyah that 1/3. For mirath, for example, if a person is a non-Muslim, cannot receive mirath. But the non-Muslim person can receive wasiyah. If a person is Muslim, he has wealth, his parents are not Muslim, let's say, and they cannot receive inheritance, but the person can leave wasiyah to give some of his wealth to them, and the limitation is 1/3. The only ulama say the only exception that one cannot give wasiyah is mushaf or Quran as a wasiyah, because the person is not Muslim, so that's the only condition.
I'm talking about the serious problem among the Muslims, whereby children start dividing the wealth of their parents while they're still alive, which is a very serious issue. That's what I was touching, which is said happening in the Muslim populations as well.
But in this case, I mean, dividing it before someone is dead and taking them, like control and taking them in their control is wrong. But if they are, like I'm talking about, that to be aware of their, what would be their share, okay, to get to know, okay, sometimes some parents don't reveal their assets, their wealth, okay, they keep it secret, and then God forbid something happens, accidentally, then what happens? Children don't know where the assets are. Okay, those are the things that need to be discussed, and the family should know, and that wasiyah comes into action here, that when everything is written, then there is no confusion. So if a person keeps it to himself, doesn't share it, and he passes away, he will be responsible, be accountable when he meets Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that money he left behind has to go onto those who are heirs of the deceased.
Sorry, brother. We have a question.
I have a question. That was just a comment. That was just a comment. My question.
Question first, there, please.
Can we just give others a question first? Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is with Brother Bilal, please. I'm in the process of writing my will, and after me and my wife passes away, what about my kids? Because we don't have any family member over here, and I want to nominate a custodian or guardian back in my country, or my brother living somewhere else. So will Australian law will accommodate that thing, or my kids can't go out of this country?
I think there were two questions there, but to deal with the first question, so you can appoint anyone you like to be the guardian of your children, but you need to take into account the practical implications of choosing someone overseas. So, brother, what country are you from? Pakistan. So, the family members that you would want to appoint as guardians for your children, would they be would it be conceivable for them to be able to get a visa and travel to Australia to take care of your children? Because Australia has a very strict immigration system. It's not easy to come here. So you need to factor that in. But you can appoint them legally. Now, at the very end of your question, you asked, now, sorry, I've just had a mental blank now. What was, there was another question that you asked.
Yeah, is will Australian law will permit my kids to go back?
Oh yes, that's a part. So that is difficult because if you appoint someone to be your guardian, so your children's guardian, they are effectively the legal guardian, just like you. They become just like their parents. So they have the power to take them back to Pakistan. They have the power to keep them in Australia. They can do whatever they want because they are effectively the legal guardian. Walaikum salam.
Salam alaikum. Thank you for organizing. This is a nice event, absolutely very important for all of us Islamic society. So I got a couple of questions if you've got time, so I'll just ask very quickly. And thank you, brother. I had that similar question asking about the appointing executor as per the will. Because here we just started our new first generation husband and wife, so it's very hard to decide who will be our next executor. Is it from friends? Because if they have a few family members hardly there. So I think I got my few answer from there. So what's the average timing of processing for bureau at this stage? And in South Australia, is it we can done at the same day the process, or it takes a couple of days because of the paper processing?
Yeah, usually if you get the death certificate from the doctor, you can have it in the same day. It's the only issue, like the steps of the funeral service, like they are available to finalize everything for you at the same day. Usually the max we can go with the 2 days unless you have the doctor ask for more investigation about the cause of the death. Then you have to coroner and get this kind of investigation. Is the only delay happen, and you don't know how long it will take. Sometimes you have to get the biopsy and all this stuff. Maybe it take 2-3 days, depend. But usually I don't think it's more than 3 days, something like that. But depend the course of the days. If really there is some suspicious, okay, so then it takes more than 1 week or 2 weeks. Yes.
Thank you. So in our community, there are sometimes, even though in some processes they need to be as soon as possible, but they have a question. I'm just getting over from our community groups or friends. So if they want to send their after death to their own country, so do we support them to bring to the overseas the dead bodies and stuff?
Actually, it's a very good question. We didn't think about it, but I think we have to put on the list. Yeah, so what is Filza?
Because when you transfer overseas, you need embalming. So this is something that we need to ask Imam as well in terms of embalming process to transfer the body from here to there.
First of all, whether it is something allowed or not, or recommended, why we want to move the body to another place. Some countries, for example in Europe, because they don't have available plots for the Muslim burial, and they have understanding between the governments. I learned from Germany and Turkey, for example. The Turkish community in Germany is quite big, like millions there. So they have understanding. The government, two governments have a diplomatic relationship, and they, whoever, any Turkish person dies in Germany, the process is very easy because the governments have understanding. They can transfer the body to Turkey, and then the burial is done. And Islamically, is that required? No, it's not required. Because the earth belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you have chosen this place when you are alive on your own free will, then you say, no, I don't want to be buried here. That logically also doesn't make sense. But again, it's a person's interest that I want to be buried in my own community with my people. This is, some ulama say it's makruh as well, because you should not be delaying the burial of the person without any valid reason. But what's the reason here? We need to look at it. If there's no reason, it shouldn't be, because even the body, the ruh of that person says, please take me to my final destination. Okay, and the process of that is totally a legal matter, where when I was living here in 2001 or 2002, there was an accident where 3 people from Afghanistan, I think they were from Afghanistan, they died in an car accident, and they wanted to transfer the body, and they had to go through Pakistan because they can't take the body to Afghanistan. So it took more than 1 month just fighting for the process. Going to Pakistan, trying to get the visa, and then they're organizing the ticket, and that's quite costly. 1 month they kept delaying it. At the end, they could not manage, and after 1 month, we had to bury them in Al Khalil. So that was not justice done to those who died. So we should always put Islam first, okay? Since there is no valid reason or excuse, then we should not. And if it is, we're going to take the body, then it's totally beyond our capacity. We can, if there is a requirement from the Islamic Society or from the Imam that to write a letter for them, for the family, okay, this person, Muslim family wants to be buried in their own country, just a recommendation letter, that's the only thing we could give. Beyond that, our hands are tied, because it's a legal issue then between the countries. Allah.
Just last question, because sometimes we have a lot of parents coming and visiting, so naturally they are elderly parents, so do you have any provision to, if something happened with their accidental death or anything, do you have any provision to process their burial service here, or with any steps? Thank you for that.
No, like as long as it's a Muslim, okay, so there is no problem. We can have it like Smith, for example, there, and Khalil, I believe, I think there is no legal restriction about visitors using the Islamic the cemetery in general. Am I right with that? Yeah. I don't think there is.
I think that's. At one time I attended one of the other funeral services whereby that issue is very involved because of the membership and all those kind of things that involved. But here there's no membership. 1,500 you get the service, 5,500 or something you get the burial place, finished. But if it involves membership, that's the issue the brother that is asking. That person come, I'm a member, but my father is not a member. How is that going to be?
Okay. So, thank you for clarification. I'll give you an example of what's Smith doing now, like the current Islamic section that we are doing it there. If someone buy plot there, okay, and in that legal document when you sign it with the Islamic Society, you can nominate any person can bury in that plot, as long as the owner of this plot nominate that person. And as well, as you know, I don't know if you are aware, we have 3 levels as well in that plot as well. So you can use one of this level. So the owner who's the one who decide who can be at this, not even the Islamic Society, as long as the owner mentioned it. Make sense?
Salam. I'm Irfan here. Jazakallah for organizing this. It was really informative from all aspects, really much needed. My 2 questions would be for President Ahmed Bro and also Uzair Bro about the binding thing that you mentioned. If you have a self-managed super fund, who does that? Because your accountant is managing that binding thing. Before, when I was having it with the Sharia compliant thing, they just sent a form, you sign it and send it. But since I have been doing with an accountant, the self-managed, I don't know who actually I need to approach for the binding one. That's a question for you.
Yes. Look, whether this binding death benefit nomination is a legal document, so it can be prepared either by the lawyers, okay, or the trustees of the fund. So being a trustees of the fund, you are allowed to have this document in place, or your lawyer. Accountants, being an accountant, they are not allowed because of the changes in legislation. Previously, yes, they were allowed to prepare the binding death benefit nomination as per the wishes of the trustees or the member of the fund. But since 2019, government decided that accountants are not the financial advisors and therefore they can't prepare that document. So if you are preparing the document as a member, that's perfectly all right. But it's just that it has to be a valid document, which means that it has to be drafted properly and signed by the members and the witnesses who were age 18 and over, and they were not a beneficiary of your fund. So if you're completing that, binding that permission yourself, that's perfectly all right.
Is there a sample document that we could find somewhere that we could go ahead with it?
But there are lots of templates. I can provide you with the template, like the one I just wrote. This is my template. You can use that. I can forward that to you.
And it's saved with the trust, with the accountant, is it? Once we do
Yes,
that?
yes. You have to give to your accountant so they can put in file for record for future reference if something, God forbid, happens to you.
Yeah.
Then they can use that document as a guideline. But there are lots of other things involved when someone passed away, when one of the members passed away. Probate is one of those things, which is a legal processing and everything.
Brother Ahmed, we bought a couple of plots for the Indian Hyderabadi community with Smithfield in that place. Is there any hard date? I'm sorry if I missed that. You mentioned when you're launching these funeral services, is there a hard date that we are starting these services on this date? The other thing is, usually when death happens, no one knows what to do, what's the first thing. So is it possible to have a checklist, like go to the coroners, how to get this death certificate, or what's the first point of contact, like a checklist to have? So because the family, most of the people are not aware of getting to the process, or would that be part of the funeral services?
So yeah, that's why we have the Salam funeral service, because most of our community members, they don't know who to contact and how to do. So as long as you contact one of our funeral directors, so just leave the rest for them. Okay, so they will process everything and they will communicate with you and will let you know what's happened and what the next. That's because we had this issue before, like people communicate like the other funeral services and keep communicating to the society what we have to do. We didn't get the right answer. We are waiting. Someone not answering. So inshallah, by our like panel members of the directors, they can solve this problem. We have alhamdulillah almost 8 people there. Okay, and we are willing to have more people because the more people we have to put on the funeral directors with, like the easiest will be for the community. Because when someone passes away, the least things that we can provide to the member is to support with this whole process, because most of the family member was like not in like the good situation to do all this stuff. So inshallah, this service will be a solution for them, inshallah.
Okay. Any take brothers or resources?
So the funeral services, as we already started before. So far we've done 3 services so far, and we didn't launch it. This is the first day we launched this service. Even we didn't publish it, we didn't send anything. So this is the first day, but because the people contact the society after they've heard about the Smithfield, they already get impression that the society, they're doing this kind of funeral service. But actually we didn't, and we added on the top when we finalized the thing with the Smithfield Cemetery. But we already start, so if anyone like want to use the service, they can start from now, because we already have the people and the trained people and all their directors, they know exactly what they are doing at the moment.
Jazakallah khair, brothers.
Just one second. Okay, just clarification. I'm talking about the funeral services starting, but about the cemetery itself, as you know, like we already signed the contract. We already paid the deposit 10%. The next stage for that section, that the ACA, they start developing the area. They need from 6 to 8 months to finish. I don't know, like because you know they said 6 to 8 months, maybe could be less, could be more. But in the meantime, if anyone wants to use that land, there is already Islamic section in the Smithfield, in the area where it's like everyone there. So it's one section for 200 period. The ACA, they have agreement with us. If any member already bought a plot, okay, in Smithfield, and they pass away within this time before the development, they can use this Islamic section with the same price. So there is no change. So we can offer two offers, either to use this section, like the Islamic section, or to refund the money and to find different Islamic. Makes sense now?
I have a question. So, then just a couple of things just to clarify. That if someone has got a grave or plot at Al Khalil, and they are one of the members of SMS Retrieval Services, can we contact you for the service, or it should be done through full funeral?
Okay. Yeah, this is a good question as well. Like at the moment, the funeral services is just launched now. So we need to prove ourselves to the community that we are dedicated like department for the other to use us. As I mentioned before, I mentioned Adelaide Mosque, they are using funeral, and at Khalil Mosque they are using funeral. I cannot push them to use the Salam funeral service until they say, okay, this kind of service is Islamic service, a new one. The people who work in, especially the funeral director, they are like very experienced, very skilled. They can put themselves to the community. They may ask us to use like the services for them. At the moment, the Khalil using full and the Adelaide Mosque using full. In the future, I don't know. It's like dependent.
So as we speak, if someone wants to get buried at a Khalil, we still have to contact full funeral.
Yeah, because you are using the Khalil cemetery and the funeral they got the record, so that's why they cannot mix up with the record. We don't have the record for Khalil or McLaren, but we have the record for the Smithfield, so we can use the record there. So it is not complicated, but still not like clear for everyone. So that's why we have to keep it clear that at the moment we are not apply or like pushing the Khalil or Adelaide Mosque using our services.
My second question is very quickly, because when people contact us, they ask us about the cost of the total cost of the funeral. We know that Al Khalil is like 12,700 or 13,000 plus. City Masjid is 5,500. So if we take this service, we advise members to go with you guys. So 1,500 is the service charges plus what's the cost of the
So the cost at the moment at the plot, to buy the plot now and to have it for the next almost 80 years is 5,400 plus GST.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to buy now, okay, can install this money for 4 years, or can pay in full, but you can record it under like your name, and then the price won't be increased until the next 50 to 80 years. It will be the same price. So that's why we ask everyone to buy from now, because as you know, every year the price will be up, so it's better to buy from now. Okay, this only for the plot, but the services is totally different. Okay.
7,000.
So almost 7,000.
Alright, so we're going to take last 6 questions. I've already identified who you are.
Yes.
So just bear in mind.
Maybe they will answer.
My question is related to superannuation. Do we need to pay zakat on the superannuation amount that we own in our account?
Because technically it's not in your possession, unless you reach the preservation age, which is 65 if you're born before 1960, or 67 if you're born after 1964, in fact not 60, 1964. So because it's not in your possession right now, you don't have to pay zakat on it. Because you can't pull out money from your super.
Yeah, there's no zakat on super until you receive it. And there's one more thing in relation to super, brother, to explain, when you invest it, you have the money that you get as profit from your investment, plus the interest as well is involved in that. That interest money that you have to be aware of that. Once you receive whatever the amount of interest money you receive, you have to get it off that one first before you start using that money, because that interest part is haram. It's like you have a even savings account, it comes like very small amount of interest, and that has to be known exactly like what is the figure of that, and then give it away. Don't count it towards your charity or zakat, and then the remaining is halal for you. And then once you receive, that's the year you start giving on the zakat. So al-hawl is still required. Today you received as your super, you have to wait for a whole hawl, 1 year, because one of the conditions of the zakat is nisab, that your money should reach to the nisab, the minimum level, and then one hawl, 1 year passes, and then you start giving zakat.
Is this related to both for the compulsory super and the self-contribution? Because the compulsory super is if employee is working the government or anyone, taking the share of the salary and the profit. It's a compulsory. But there's another super as we know.
Semi-sacrifice.
Self-contributed, which is we do that to minimize our tax.
Yes.
Otherwise, if we don't pay that tax, that super, we still need to pay the zakat every year. But because we put this one as a self-contribution, so how does it work? Do we still need to pay at the end of the clearance of the super, or?
I believe the self contribution is, it's like the best analogy is that it's like you give loan to someone. Okay, you give loan to someone, that's your money. You're responsible for that. You give zakat from that. Yes, the only difference is self contribution. You cannot take it out from them, but still it was your option thing. So it's your money. So you have to include that in your current zakat that you give annually. Allahu Akbar. Otherwise, it will be a way of trying to avoid paying zakat as well.
Assalamu alaikum. I just have a practical question which came in my mind right now when I was listening to this discussion. You can choose to answer this, or you can say you don't have any knowledge to this. Let's say Australia, the culture is changing very fast. 20 years from now, let's say the will was written in 2022 by a father for his daughter and son. With the proportions you mentioned, the property gets divided. Islam clearly defines man and woman. In 20 years from now, we don't know. So far I have not come across any Muslim changing any genders. What happens to that will at that time? Can they contest that will? Or Australian law supersedes Sharia law, or Sharia law supersedes that law? What happens then?
Okay, that's an interesting question. It seems that you are a Hanafi probably, because this is the only Hanafi school. They predict the questions 100 years later what happens, and then they come up with their solution. Yes, number one, that will be inshallah dealt with the ulama who will live 20 years later, inshallah. They will know the situation better. But this thing was, whether it's about the gender change, everything, had been discussed in Islam 1400 years ago. The ulama have started establishing the Sharia and then written books about that. There's a thing called Al-Khuntha. Kitab Al-Khuntha is a topic, a chapter in every fiqh book, where there is someone's a gender is not known, male or female, by birth or it's changed. All those things are discussed already. Okay? So according to that, ulama have discussed that we have to look and gets to be checked by the specialist, doctors, scientists, whoever gets involved, and whatever they decide that person is male or female, that will be, and all the Sharia, mirath and wasiyah, everything will be done accordingly. So okay, that is something the ulama inshallah will deal with that, and Sharia cannot be superseded by any other law. That's number one. Okay? Sharia is always Allah's law. It is our failure that we cannot abide by it, we cannot implement it. That's our weakness. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring us back to the straight path and unity, inshallah. Quran and Sunnah is fully established, not in the world, but among us, as individuals. That's the number one. When we start from us, then it will become a solution for the whole community. So we leave it to the, inshallah, to ulama in the future who will inshallah deal with that. Allah.
I'm asking a question on behalf of reverts. Alhamdulillah, even though I've been a Muslim, a revert for 30 years, but it still troubles me with the answer to this, but I need an answer. There's a lot of people, alhamdulillah, throughout this world that are reverting to Islam. If a revert is on the will of her parent, and the parent is a non-Muslim, like myself and my children are all on my mother's will, but she is a non-Muslim, and I've told her take me off the will, but she refuses. What happens when she gives me...
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة
What should a rebirth do if they are on the will of their non-Muslim parent or grandparent?
Alright, I think we just touched on that one. Inheritance, receiving inheritance from a non-Muslim to a Muslim is a condition that for the receiver must be a Muslim and the one who gives must be a Muslim. It's only works between two Muslims. Okay, it's in the inheritance. But when we talk about the will is a kind of gift. Someone writes that I want to give this portion of my wealth to someone. And that person, there are two conditions, that the person who is receiving the will should not be among the ones who receive the inheritance. If you are legally, for example, your son. My son, for example, naturally he receives inheritance from me. I cannot write a will for him extra. I cannot give $10 I want to give extra to him and I record that in the will. That is against Islam, can't do that. Because he is taking his share from the mirath. The will is only given to a person who does not receive inheritance. And that does not require Islam as a condition. A non-Muslim can give will, write will for a Muslim, vice versa. So if a son who is a Muslim, parents are not Muslim, he cannot give his mirath because they cannot inherit from him due to the difference of the faith. So the son can write a will, okay, for his parents, and the only condition is shouldn't be beyond 1/3. If he leaves $100,000, he can give $30,000 to his parents who are not Muslims, and he can work the other way around. So that's all the confusion. Some people try to understand, and then they confuse themselves with the will and mirath are the same things. There are two different things.
Assalamu alaikum. This question is for Brother Salam. In our day-to-day life, when we care for our children, we don't distinguish between how much we spend on a boy and how much we spend on our daughter. We show the same amount of love, and when we buy things, we also buy in equal. So while I agree that end of the day when it comes to mirath, yes, this is the percentage. It also means that throughout your life you follow the practice of giving the same amount of love to your children. But when at the last moment you're making this distinction on the percentage that you bequeath them. So I'm just asking. I know that's Allah's wisdom, but is there anything as a parting parent would do to make sure that, end of the day, that children are both happy with whatever they have got? I hope you got the gist of my question.
Yes, that's a good question as well. So there is in Islam justice, okay? It is not equality, but it's equity. Equality, if you look at it like, you know, if you have a daughter and a son and you give to your son $50, you must give $50 to your daughter. But it's not about that. Justice is about equity, their needs. The needs grow as they grow. For example, your son who is just 5 years old, you have another son who is 25 years old. Okay? Their needs are different. So you as a parent have to deal and treat them accordingly, fulfill their needs according to their situation. But if you give more with the intention of, like, you know, I love this child more than this, so I want to give more, only and then Allah knows your intention, then that's not right. That's why there's a story that I think Talha radiallahu anhu came to the Prophet ﷺ saying that, Ya Rasulullah, and he came with his son. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I want you to be my witness that I have a garden, palm trees. I want to make this one under my son's name. And he's still alive. He's basically kind of trying to do will while he's alive to his son. Prophet said, do you have other children? He said, yes. He said, did you write a similar thing to others as well? He said, no, because I love him more than the others. So Prophet said, do not ask me to become a false witness. This is haram, you can't do that. So whatever they need day to day, then they have to. But if you buy something that's like, you know, a car or a house or immovable property that you want to give to one, like your children, in that case you have to be, like, you know, treat them equally. Okay, because then you have your authority on your wealth. But after your death, because you have no authority, you can't speak. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes that responsibility onto him to help you out from that responsibility.
Salam alaikum. Regarding will, is what the preparation we need to do before we come to the will? And also how much it costs, or if it's expensive in an Islamic society to project or do anything to help and put themselves as well as benefit this one, so spread it well in the community. Most people so do it.
So perhaps I'll address the first part and then I'll ask Brother Ahmed to address the second part. In terms of preparing for a will, if you're going to go through a lawyer, basically the lawyer will ask you questions about your circumstances, but you need to give thought beforehand as to who you want to appoint as your executor, guardian for children, what properties you have, how you own them. So you need to be familiar with the certificate of title for your home, for example. Have a good understanding of your assets. And then if you're going to go through a lawyer, the lawyer will prepare the document. If you were going to have a go at doing it yourself, there are some resources, you know, things like will kits. I don't recommend them because, as I said before, they can cause issues, but I guess you would seek out something like that. And then, you know, prepare the will. In terms of the second question, so the cost, I can only speak for myself. Okay, so I charge $450 inclusive of GST for a single will, and $650 for couples, because there's a discount with couples because there's an overlap, same children, same circumstances, and that's inclusive of everything, the whole process.
Regarding the second question, I would like to ask Bilal about it. Can we do it as Islamic society?
It's quite complicated because as a lawyer, my agreement is with the client. It's a confidential process. And if what your question is, for example, if the society were to have some understanding with me, whereby you come to me, and rather than me charging $450, I charge $200 because the society is going to somehow subsidise the remainder, there'd have to be like a written agreement to that effect, and you would have to be, you would have to have a complete understanding as to what's involved. Otherwise, I can get myself into trouble. It is a bit complicated. I guess it's possible. No such agreement exists in South Australia as to what I'm aware of. But I'd be more than happy to speak to Brother Ahmed about that. if the community wants something like that.
The point is to spread it in community, like everyone, like it become natural to community, not to few people, you know, like people, I believe not many people, most people put it off, like I will do it and I will do it.
They put it off. Yeah, you're right. Mm.
So this way.
Yeah, it seems we are going to have a deal with Brother Bilal now. You can witness it. Sister Filza is next portion. Yeah, inshallah we'll discuss with Brother Bilal and get back to you, inshallah.
Last question.
Jazakumullah khair for giving me the last one, because alhamdulillah, a lot of my questions have been answered until even this last one actually. This was also my question, that alhamdulillah. So I have several questions, but I will ask only one, which is a little bit outside the box. This is for Brother Bilal. I was a bit scared when you mentioned about the situation of intestacy, to enter into that if there's no will. And I believe a lot of brothers and sisters at the moment, it can happen. Now my question would be, it's a bit scary, is there any effort probably in the Muslim leadership to take this on so that when this happens, because there are a lot of good brothers and sisters Muslim, but for some reason they fail to do this, and falling into intestacy can be very shameful and is very hard to swallow. Is there any effort in the Muslim leadership that that they can take over from there, or is there any experiences from that that has happened like that? It's scary.
So just to repeat, for those who didn't pick up on the question, intestacy means, is basically where someone passes away without a will. So basically we say they die intestate or intestacy, dying without a will. Firstly, I'm not an Islamic leader, so it's difficult for me to answer that question, but I do know that many organisations in the community, I'll just raise a few, you know, the PASA, Pakistani Association of South Australia, Adelaide Egyptian Society, the Bangladeshi Doctor Association, there's various Malay and other organisations. They've all made efforts to help educate the community involving like an event like this where I've spoken or other people have spoken. So it's difficult. I'm not aware of what other efforts the community are making, but from time to time there are talks, and I'm always happy to speak to any community, whether it be at a formal event or if the community leader wants to contact me, I can give some information about, you know, what it involves and why it's so important. I'm not sure whether that answers your question or not, but do you want to?
Somehow means there's no way except people have to be educated, and the will has to be sort of be there in place already. That's what I can take from there. Otherwise,
so if there is any other like way, like more than educate the community should we like as a leaders do it? Do you have any other like suggestions?
No, it just scared me, and that's why. Yeah, it just scared me that you may find a good family, good brothers and sisters, but for some reason they fail to see this and they die and then become entering into that. And as you said yourself, it's not consistent with Islamic principles, and to fall into that is picked up. I was thinking that because a lot of other groups, religious groups, they do some sort of effort to lobby, and what their law also becoming accepted law in the land. So it's becoming accepted as a default when there is a. That's what I was trying to think of.
So that's something like a good point. Probably I will raise this issue with the ANIC, Australian National Imams Council, which is like the organization taking care of those Islamic matters. So inshallah there should be some way that we could like bring it out, and number one is education awareness. But in regard to the wasiyah is something mashroor in Islam. Islam allows it. Okay, whoever wants to make a will, he should make a will and then should make it written and through the witnesses. When a person dies, there are 4 things. Firstly, from his wealth. Number 1, you look at the funeral expenses from his wealth, that you spend that money for that. Second one is, then you have to pay the debt, all right, of that person if he owes. And the debt is of 2 types, like Allah's, if he owes something to Allah, or zakah or something, where it has to be paid from it, or not. There's a difference of opinion among scholars. In the Hanafi school, that is with the death of person, that he's not, his money should not be spent for that. If someone made a kafara, okay, if I do this, I'll pay, and he could not pay. So that will not be even counted. And the third one is wasiyah. If there was a wasiyah, then it will be implemented. But if there was no wasiyah, then that remaining money will go straight to the mirath. It jumps, like it skips that one. But if there is wasiyah written, then it will be something that the responsible person has to follow up with.
One thing you have touched on that. What about if the debt exceeds the wealth left behind?
Then it is whatever exceeds. It is the moral responsibility of the family members to pay his debt, but it's not their duty. Okay, if they don't pay, the person will be responsible on the day of judgment. He has to pay it through his good deeds. But if it's recommended, it's the moral. It's not Islamic responsibility for a son to pay the father's debt. It is not on him, but it is morally encouraged that the family, help the person. That's Islamic. Can I just finish with one last question? Probably now it's for the benefit of that everyone. The will we're talking about. How binding that will is legally? Can someone challenge that will, even after everything has been done legally, forms are filled? Then is it final that a member of the family could go, no, I'm not happy with this, goes to the court?
It's a very good question. I wanted to touch on it before, but we just had such limited time. So basically, a will is binding. However, a family member can contest a will. It doesn't matter whether you do an Islamic will or any type of will, a family member always has the ability to challenge a will. But whether they'll be successful or not will depend on the circumstances. So for example, if you've got 2 sons, Islamically you give them equal shares, okay? If one of those sons was very poor and the other son was a millionaire, the poorer son could go to the court and basically make submissions to the judge that, I'm not very well off and I'm in need of this money. Whereas my brother, he doesn't need the money and he's getting as much as me. A judge in those circumstances could potentially give that second son, or the first son, I should say, more. But it just depends. If for example, you've got a daughter who would receive less Islamically than a son, she could challenge a will, going to the court and saying, I only got half of what my brother got, I want more. If a judge looks at the circumstances and sees that she's actually doing really well, financially she's secure, and the son's not secure, a judge won't entertain her challenge. So we have to be mindful that in a Western secular society, there are some exceptions to the general rule, but an Islamic will is not inconsistent with the law. You are entitled to give your estate to whoever you choose. There's a concept at law called freedom of testation. You have the freedom to give it to whoever you want, but just be mindful that a court could step in and make some adjustments depending on the needs of your family.
Thank everybody for coming out today. We'll take a couple minutes off to go to the neighbourhood, and then we'll come back and there are some refreshments up at the back. And if you do have any further questions, our panelists will be here. You can approach them and ask them. Thank you.